welcome everybody again. And I'm Simone, as you know. I'm the event co-host together with our wonderful Boundaryless team, and also with the two very special co-hosts for today that you may be familiar with if you had the chance to listen to our recent closing podcast where we debated the main thesis emerging from our research and prepared us for the next series coming up next October or in the fall more generally. So here with me, I have Lisa Gensky. Lisa, do you want to say hello to everybody? You're mute. You're mute.
Of course. Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and look forward to the day's events.
Thank you, Lisa, especially for being with us so early in the day. She's in Canada, so it's 6 in the morning at the moment. And also welcome, good afternoon or morning. At noon, actually, in Italy, you still need to say good morning. So good morning to Bill Fisher.
It's nice to be here with you. It's always great to be with the Boundaryless crew. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. As you may know, as a first step, basically I am, I'm going to talk about more or less what is the frame of this event. How did we get here? No? So essentially, we've been embarking in this research at the end of the last year, and we decided to, basically focus this research around great conversations that we had with thought leaders and practitioners. And this brought us really to understand the broader complexity of the topic that we were talking about. So as some of you may know, Boundaryless in 2016 came up with the Platform Design Toolkit 2.0 and with a relevant white paper that to some extent co-created this space of platforms and ecosystems thinking all over the world, and function as a foundation for a design practice that have been unfolding in the last 4 years. And when we set on this new track, we basically acknowledged that it was important to really broaden the scope and to really focus on the context of platforms and ecosystems thinking. And so along the way, we kind of discovered that the complexity of talking about this topic went much beyond the topic of business model innovation or the topic of organizational evolution. And we touched so many topics that some of them are mentioned here in this picture. But at the end of the day, we ended up with this framing. So this idea that the question of the future of platforms and ecosystems thinking, and how you build products and organizations and services for a rapidly changing world can be to some extent framed across these 3 axes. And the axis of technology and the technosphere. So we are increasingly, and we will talk about this in a moment, we are increasingly seeing this pattern of, organizing marketplaces and platforms and ecosystems as a central approach, a central pattern to organize the economy going forward, thanks to the pervasivity of the internet. And, a few months ago, I think I heard Mark Andreessen saying, the internet is going out of its infancy age. So we're really entering the age of a maturing internet. And as Ben Thompson said again a few months ago, how can you go more pervasive than everywhere and all the time? So this is now where how much internet is infused in our experiences. So that's one point, the technological pervasivity of marketplaces. Another key point that we see is essentially the systemic shift that we are seeing in terms of acknowledging that it's not just about creating the next user experience. It's really about understanding that our systems and our organizations and products need to be framed through health aspects. So it needs to be, we need to design for, we need to embrace these salutogenic design processes that, as Daniel called them in our podcast recently. So we need to really understand that when we design systems, those systems are embedded, and if we design for health, for systemic health, we need to take care of this deep embeddedness of our initiatives in the ecosystems that essentially contour them and contain them. So that's one point. So moving from customer experiences towards a more systemic health. And then the third main thesis that is emerging, and we will talk about all these theses today, it's that we actually need to redraw fully our human development thesis. We really need to acknowledge that at the moment our organizations and our societies do not give the right space for our human flourishing, and that's another key point that is emerging. And I would say that the unifying aspect that we believe it's essential to consider is this aspect of basically reinventing our organizational models, so that we can account, we can amplify all these trends, and we can have organizations that are really able to resonate with these three axes. So this is more or less where we are in terms of understanding, and I will start very quickly with a short moment where I'm gonna focus mostly on this initial aspect, so the marketplace pervasiveness and how this relates with the organizational evolution that we, as we envision at the moment. And the rest of the picture, I think, will be fully covered by the conversations that are happening in the first part of the event. We're going to have several speakers. We're going to have several sessions, actually 4 sessions, where we're going to explore all these theses more deeply. But let me start from this quick trend update. The ones that are here on the call, that in the meeting, that have spent some time catching up with our research updates, and most importantly, I would say with the last research update that we published, I think something like 3 weeks ago, will be familiar with these conversations. Another thing that may be useful to highlight is that along the way, during the research months that we have been spending so far from February on, I would say, we have been releasing 5 essential, if I'm not wrong, or 6 research updates that you can find on our research homepage. That maybe Guglielmo or Sina, you can rapidly share in the chat, where people can link and explore our blogs. And essentially, in the last research update, we really had the chance to explain how the pervasivity in marketplaces, the application of the marketplaces pattern and the platform pattern is really expected to grow and to fill up all the space. And this is based on several considerations. Again, I like the quote that you see in the page from Rita McGrath, such a legend of organizational innovation and transformation. And she was really clear a few weeks ago when on a podcast from our friends at Aperture, she explained that essentially as you start to see this plummeting transaction cost everywhere, and with these digitally powered interfaces, it's a no-brainer to accept and to expect that where previously you had a complicated firm to manage a market, you will end up having a marketplace and platform and an ecosystem being organized through these mechanisms of supply and demand, and connecting supplier and consumers, and creating these learning spaces. So at the moment, 15 to 25% of commerce, of trade and services are online. 15% is more the Western percentage, while 25% is more the China percentage. So it's also good to acknowledge that we are living a world at the moment that is profoundly, profoundly, I would say, divided, you know, because we don't have one internet at the moment. We have probably several ones. So we have the US internet, the European internet, the Chinese internet, Indian internet. So the world is a bit fragmenting in the background. But you know, staying focused on this topic, what we see is that, for example, 10% of GDP that is represented by education is just now starting to move online. And here we have Bill, which is teaching at this business school, so he will be able to confirm. But essentially, there is a rising interest now to really learn through different paths, but not just at the I would say advanced education, but also basic for example, with homeschooling and with new patterns for learning and education. So it's just now, and it's 10% of our GDPs, and it's just now starting to move online. When we think about real estate, for example, another interesting reflection is that buying a house, it's online at the moment, but not all the rest of the processes. So for example, how do you build a house is not yet really a process that is facilitated through these kind of platforms. And some of the attendees on this event, I know they are also exploring these markets. And finally, just another example, food. We know that you can order food online, but most of the ways that we actually harvest our food are not organized through these patterns. And we have been able to work with customers that are approaching now these kind of markets with the aim to transform it. So the economy is moving online, and these patterns are everywhere. And I think I really encourage you guys to get back to the interview that we had with James Currier at the start of our podcast series, where we explored why applying these interfaces, these marketplace interfaces, is too, it's just too powerful to not to expect that this pattern is going to be pervasive everywhere. And yeah, we are also spotting another essential trend that is what we call the verticalization. So we have here in the left the now very famous, I would say, picture that explains how Craigslist is being verticalized and unbundled within time, and that's just something that we are talking about since ages now. But what we are seeing, it's really that markets are fragmenting and vertical solutions are coming up everywhere. So for example, once you had only eBay, now you have these vertical marketplaces like Reverb, where you can trade used or new instruments, musical instruments. And that's another example that I like to do. It's the example from Fundbox, which was SME funding loans platform. And now you have this vertical going, for example, like Produce Pay into agriculture. And so we are seeing this trend everywhere, because the pattern that we see has been quite well described by Darcy Coolican and Jeff Jordan in this blog post on Anderson Horowitz's blog, where basically the question is, when you have these big marketplaces, inevitably, as the platforms grow, their submarkets also grow. And to some extent, people are not yet satisfied with this common denominator experience, lowest common denominator experiences. So they tend to expect better user experiences that are focused on their own niche. And this makes the case basically for a new organization to address it, a new company to address this opportunity and organize better the marketplace and the business process related. So before moving to the next slide, let me remind you then that we are using this hashtag Future of Platforms 2020 if you want to share some tweets or some insights with your audience on Twitter, for example. So coming back to the flow, based on this, few days ago in the last research update that I mentioned, we shared this kind of marketplace map. So we tried to map out how these kind of 4 quadrants are coming up. And there is an essential the division between horizontal and vertical markets. So horizontals are marketplaces which are more generalist, and vertical are the ones that go more deep into the niche, and managed versus unmanaged. So it's a common pattern that as you move into a specific niche market, like for example, as you can see there, there is Wonder School, which is a marketplace for homeschooling, or in general kindergartens, independent kindergartens, Miro, which is a marketplace for photographers, and Creczy, that is another good example, is a marketplace for commercial real estate, sales. And so while you go more deep into the niche, you normally end up in having to provide this more exciting and more dedicated user experience. And this ends up in requiring the organization that organizes the market to do more, basically, to do more instead of doing less. So we are pretty used to this idea of marketplaces as, asset light and, basically providing opportunities for quickly organizing markets and making lots of data and money in the process. But what we see now is that as you move into the verticals, brands and organizations are required to invest much more in terms of capital, in terms of energy, in terms of on-field presence, in terms of understanding of the industry. So it's really, for example, very much needed a specific market experience. So essentially, these, and I'm not going to be very long on that, but what happens is that based on the complexity of the market, based on the need for overseeing more of the experience, for example, by, by selecting the suppliers instead of letting the buyers to select their suppliers independently, you, as a brand, as an organization, you need to take more care of the overall process, and you need to be more pervasively present across the board of the experience. And what happens here is that essentially you have these kind of 4 types of organizations. You cannot see that here because some post-its are overlapped, but you have different types of organizations. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment to explain essentially the impacts that the nature of the networks you organize, it's impacting the shape of the organization you need to create. So I want to thank Fabrice Grinda for his tremendous work on marketplaces. So again, if you guys are interested in the topic, you really need to dig his work. And in this amazing presentation, from which I took some inspirations recently, and also on this presentation, he makes these 3 points, these 3 cases for the future of marketplaces. Again, one is verticalization, so overcoming lowest common denominator. One is managed experiences. As I said, the more you want to provide a better experience versus, for example, a traditional industrial option, or even a generalist horizontal marketplace, and you need to invest more, you need to create and oversee more of the process. And finally, the last point is the B2B space. So what we are seeing is also a massive deployment of marketplace dynamics and digitally powered solutions to the B2B context. And this is happening essentially because there is also in the background some kind of, I would say, generational change. So now increasingly you see digital natives that are, for example, taking over old school companies and getting tired, for example, to work with faxes and phones, and now really need to organize B2B marketplaces in a much more experience-driven way. And an example I can do, it's what, for example, Freight is doing. So organizing the freight market. So this is normally a space where you would have lots of paper documents and faxes and so on. And now it's coming online, and it's being powered very strongly by these new players. So as a result, and this is another piece of work that I may also recommend, is the DR Room Marketplace report that just came out a couple of months, I think it was February, something like that. Oh, no, sorry, it was in June, actually. That was another report. So this is really interesting in a way that explains how this is happening, you know, and so also the definition of marketplace is being stretched a little bit. And the point that I want to raise here is that even if we use the word platforms, marketplaces, we never should really get attached to the words and to the taxonomies, because what we are seeing is really a transformation of how we run organizations and businesses. And so these patterns is going everywhere, and the more you go everywhere, the more you need to own. As you can see in the lowest part of the picture, that are the direct to consumer solutions that normally now own very much the whole value chain, no? From the demand generation to customer acquisitions and go up until the production. No? So the overseeing the production, controlling the quality of the suppliers, sometimes actually picking the right supplier, and so on. So, so basically, what happens to the organization in the process? And essentially, you have two things. One thing is something that also Stove, that is here today with us, spoke about in his podcast with us. So we actually seeing effects on the market, and the presence of these huge marketplaces, or in general, these marketplaces, that can be also be smaller, the more they are vertical, it's impacting the way you shape your organization. So for example, a supplier in the space, or it's also shaping how infrastructures are created. And I think I love this idea of cloud kitchens. Cloud kitchens are spaces where now you can have these kind of virtual restaurants coming in, and these kind of virtual brands. And this is a good example of how this transformation is impacting so deeply how we build businesses and how we build infrastructures for such a businesses. So I'm going to close quickly so that we can move on. But essentially, what happens is that you also need to develop a new growth theory, a new approach to growth, because you know, we are used, if you look into the right, basically, this is the normal horizontal unmanaged idea of marketplace that we have, like Airbnbs or something like that. So you have this big algorithmic cores that essentially through design and data organize huge markets with huge network effects, and very much focused on centralized pool. So you don't actually need so much presence on the field, because everything is pulled in the center, let's say. And you have these vertical managed marketplaces where often you need to be more dependent on a category or on a geography, and all these contexts and niches have specific needs. And so you normally need very much more independent teams that can address specific market needs, specific context needs. So an example could be a category on a commerce marketplace, or it can be also a city in a specific services marketplace. So the question here is, we need to have organizations that are much more able to push you both the directions. So sometimes your organization will need to grow by centralizing these capabilities into the center, data, analytics, AI, you know, attractions, SEO, for example, search engine optimization, and so on. And other times, instead, you will end up with a more enabling organization that is much more present in the context, and maybe can address a smaller market, but with much higher much higher order value. So for example, much higher transaction values, so much higher value add, and therefore can work and can have unit economics that stay together, even if the market is smaller. But in that case, you will need a different organization. You will need an organization that is much more team independent, much more present on the field, and much more independent in making choices and so on. And this definitely resonates with the work that we are doing, for example, with the Higher Group. Some of you may be familiar with, with this idea that the organization is based on small micro enterprises that go and explore and create solutions and marketplaces that are much more contextual, much more local, much more niche. So this is normally a way to have an organization that is able to play both in all the spaces. So it's an organization that is able to go and explore the unknown, and is also able to consolidate within time and bring more industrialization in some cases. So basically, this is to say that the organization of the future, the ecosystemic organization, which we don't really know how it is, but we know that it's an organization that needs to be able to play its game at all the levels. It needs to be able to be small and contextual, and at the same time, it needs to be able to become big and centralized in some cases, depending on the networks and the marketplaces it's relating with. So this is what we call an ecosystemic organization, an organization that can play all the models. So, and last bit before moving into the panels, of course, all this works in the world of today, but we're also pretty much aware that things are shifting in the background. So we also tracking, more general trends that can generate changes into the value chain. So for example, there are 4 areas that we captured. The area of technology advancements, we see, more technologies coming in. Some of them, they promise to be rather game changing. Then we see also the age of policy making coming up, as Benedict Evans shared with us in February. The next S curve may be about policy making, because as the internet pervades everything, we will need to take care as societies to regulate this process. And finally, we also have a narrative change happening, and this is definitely related to the risk factors that we are seeing emerging. So we are seeing risk factors in terms of natural issues, related to nature, so climate, biodiversity loss, pandemics. We also see some issues coming up in terms of instabilities in the geopolitical space. And as a result, I would say, in interplay, we are seeing narratives shifting. And we expect that these impacts are going to play out pretty much in all the value chain. So for example, in terms of new models of governance, new relationships with capital and ownership, the design process in itself, the entrepreneurial process in itself. Somebody said that, for example, the relocalization of supply chains that we can expect in the future is going to be the best entrepreneurial opportunity of the 21st century. So we need to rebuild fully an economy of essentials, for example, food, energy, healthcare and social care and so on. And also we are seeing consumption pattern changing, and of course, some elements of value chains are changing their commoditization status.